Today's episode of The Sash is brought to you by Swysh, personalised videos from your favourite Essendon players. Mother's Day is approaching, everybody. It's about a week away, so why not get Mum the ultimate gift, a video from her favourite player, Zach Merritt. And with us, you can get 10% off using the code The Sash. Jesse, I'll tell you what, if Zach Merritt hasn't sold out after last night's game, he's going to be selling out very soon.
Yeah, big time. I'm big on him, and Mum's definitely. I'm subbing out the Caco, and I'm bringing in the Merit for the Swysh video.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you can save probably over $20 by using the discount code The Sash. So it's definitely worth it. Swysh.com. It's heyswysh.com. You can find all of that. Use the code The Sash. Get 10% off. Mother's Day is around the corner, people. Get on it now. Let's start the show.
Well, welcome to this week's opposition preview of The Sash. Definitely not the official podcast of the Essendon Football Club. Joining me today is a True Bloods aficionado, Madison Clark, a good friend of mine. How are you?
I'm very well. It's very nice to be with you, Joel. Aficionado is probably a little bit strong, but I give it a crack.
I think that's how the True Bloods listeners would describe you, and Deeb's probably as well.
Cult leader is probably more apt.
I would
say.
Okay.
Aficionado, look, we just muck around, as I'm sure you do. But we love the Swannies, and we love playing against the Essendon Bombers, and I'm bloody happy to be chatting with you about it.
Yeah, I'm very excited to be chatting to you too. And look, it's always a close game.
It's always a cracker. It doesn't matter what part of the ladder you're on.
Yeah.
It's always generally. Historically, it's been annoyingly close for us because we've been trying to get an easy W.
Yeah.
Well, we consider to be an easy W, Joel.
I think that's what a lot of teams think when they come up against Essendon. You know, it's easy to kind of look back on our recent form and think, oh, we've only just beaten some cellar dwellers. But I like to think that they really get up to play against us because they think they're a sniff. So they're challenging games of footy.
They are challenging games of footy. Look. Say what you will about the Essendon Bombers, and this is something I wanted to make a point of coming on here, right?
Okay.
Because I reckon you guys are done by in a big way.
Yep.
You guys have absolutely copped it.
Explain,
since 2000.
Yeah, we have.
I think it's well documented.
It's very well
how
documented.
much you've copped over the last decade plus, and it's. You always do have you crack in, right? Yep. And you've got a bloke called Zach Merritt who is for mine, Joel. Yeah, the one top 5 players in the comp without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah, it's nice to hear you say that. I think what I really hoped for and what I started to feel a little bit, I think through last year when we were performing well and looked like at certain stages through the year that we might be a finals team, was that there were other players at Essendon that opposition supporters were starting to recognise.
Yep.
You know, it's that obviously Zach Merritt's a fantastic player.
Can I give you a couple?
Please.
Durham,
fantastic.
Player.
Yeah.
Harry Jones, now he hurt himself,
he did.
but he cracks in. I've always liked what Harry does.
So that's an interesting one because I think that's one.
Is he sort of admonished by the Essendon faithful? Is he?
I think. Yes, I think he's had some supporters earlier this year. I think the wing experiment was starting to, rub off on a few of us the right way. But then when he had to get moved to the forward line, his impact on games started lessening a lot and he looked a bit shaky. So, a spell in the twos was probably on the way before he hurt himself.
Sure. I more mean just guys that I just reckon have a crack, right? And, you've got your Matt Guelphy, you've got your Ben Hobbs, Caddy's obviously, he's still learning the game, right? But, I feel like there's bones there. You struggle, right? Of course, you're sort of in a little bit of a perpetual rebuild, right? But there's players there that have a crack, Joel.
Well, it's good to hear.
It's not all.
I like
lost.
it. I'll ask you a little later around who you see as our biggest threats. Now,
sure.
How are you finding the footy in general this year?
It's funny. Last week was an interesting one, right? Because there are a few games that were touted as, I guess blockbusters per se, right? The Q Clash, meant to be a blockbuster, absolute fizzer.
It really was.
The
margin flooded Gold Coast in the end.
Yeah, well, it absolutely did. And for my side, who started so well against Gold Coast and then they absolutely tore us to shreds. And I think, at times I was talking to Deebs about this on True Bloods last night. I think I overrate us a little bit, especially with our injury list. But they looked so slick in the sort of second and third quarter that I was like, these guys are a genuine. They're the real deal. There's nothing fraud here. But I mean, are Brisbane that good? Gold Coast not that good? You just don't know. It's still early.
It's early,
right? It is early. But I think Collingwood and Geelong saved the round for mine. I think that was. That is how football should be played, right? I did have the pleasure of watching North Melbourne versus Essendon, siren to siren with my father, who quickly went back to the bedroom and he said, "I'm not watching any more of this." I said, "Don't you worry. There's a game out there for us here." And it did. Now, were the skills great? No, they weren't. They were shocking. But close game's a good game at the moment.
Well, I think every round, when we just scrape over the line against North, and I think they're a better team this year than they have been. And, we kind of just got over the line against West Coast. Every round, something else has happened that's kind of put into perspective that a win is still a win.
Yeah.
You see, like the other, I think it was when we played West Coast, I think it was Richmond who beat Freo that round potentially. And so you just see results every week and you're like, okay, we still won. And so that does level you.
You got to bank 4 points where you can bank 4 points, Joel.
You do.
We've got an injury list as long as my arm at the moment, and it's a pretty long arm.
You have long arms.
So you've got to, when it's there, you've got to take it, and you can't be too upset about it. A lot of people in the comments on social media are often like very quick. I notice it a lot with Melbourne. Very quick to be angry about a win. It's like, at the end of the day, it's a very tight competition.
Yeah.
Right? It's a very tight competition, and you've got to take them when you
can. Well, they're obviously got to post somewhere because they're not at the games. They can't say it in person, can they?
Right.
So I wanted to, let's just talk about our ladder position because coming into this, I was like, okay, like we're doing all right. Maybe this will be competitive. So we're sitting 11th. We're 4-3 at the moment. We've got a percentage of 88, which is very typical of us. You guys are sitting 14th, 3 wins, 5 losses, a percentage of 97. But 4 of your 5 losses have come to the current top 4. Hawks, Brizzy, Pies, and the Gold Coast.
I think we have the second hardest draw out of anyone in the league.
Yeah, and I mean, it's playing out that way with, Gold Coast being good at the moment and kind of Hawks continuing their rise from last year. Going back to the season so far, what do you feel in the games that you've played well? What do you feel like has gone well, and where it's gone wrong? What do you feel like has gone wrong?
I mean, I think the story's generally always the same for us. If we win or match our opposition in contested possessions, tackles, that sort of thing, we generally win. If we're getting smacked in the middle, which we have been, I've been looking for sort of incremental uplift. Week by week, I'm trying not to look at footy on a week-by-week basis at the moment. I'm just trying to see it from the bigger picture and go, okay, what did we, especially with a new coach, right? I think it's underrated how impactful that is. Now, although Dean Cox was already at the club when Horse was there, he's trying to implement his own sort of things, and he's doing that without a lot of his key cattle on the park. So I'm looking to see areas that we've not succeeded in, like we weren't scoring much on turnover, and we started doing that when we beat Fremantle, So I'm looking at things like that. People talk about our DNA being sort of your contested footy and stuff, and it is, but I think the game's moved beyond that. But I think the problem with us at the moment is, the loss of Errol Goulden. While he's young and while he's just one player, structurally he's so important to us. But even guys like Harry Cunningham, that not having Harry Cunningham there means Lizard has to play sort of a third tall. He doesn't have the ability to do whatever he wants, which he usually has, It's those sort of guys like that, supporters of other clubs wouldn't have, much of a view on. That's quite impactful. So I'm just looking at ways that we sort of, just make do with what we've got at the moment. So to come close to Brisbane, lost 4 points to Brisbane, I think is it looks pretty good right now.
For sure.
To be honest, Hawthorn, arguably we should have won. We just let the game go in the final quarter. We base our game on skill by foot.
Yeah.
And when that's off a little bit, it looks really, really bad.
Yeah.
And that can be really frustrating.
Yeah.
So it's just about getting the execution right, I think, fundamentally.
Yeah, and look, you've mentioned the injury list at the moment. So Cunningham, you've mentioned Goulden, you've mentioned obviously super important. Amadi.
Well, we don't have a forward line,
Papley,
Joel.
yeah.
We had
McDonald.
Joel Hamling, who you wouldn't know if he stood up in your porridge. That's been the gag. But now, he's become quite handy. I don't know if do you know much about the great Joel Hamling?
Was he a Bulldogs player?
He was a Bulldogs
yes.
premiership player against the mighty Schwannies.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Right.
And he's played bugger all. He actually kicked his first goal ever last week. But he was getting into Sam Taylor and Buckley all game, just niggling and niggling and niggling.
Yeah. Okay.
So now I'm sort of paying a little bit closer.
Bit of argy-bargy.
Yeah, because we've got no forward line.
Yeah.
Right? No Logan. No Amadi. McLean's had a delayed preseason. No Tom Papley.
Yeah.
Heaney's, trying to get down there, but, he predominantly plays out of the middle now.
Yeah.
So we have the great Aaron Francis trot down there.
Yes, which I'm very excited to talk about, actually. I think a number of the players you mentioned are the ones that have worried me in the past. Papley's often played a good game against us. Luke Parker had played a lot of good games.
We don't have him to tell Dylan Shield that he sleeps with a light on anymore.
That's right. And to be honest, Shield's having a renaissance.
He is. I've enjoyed his work.
Yeah, it's been very good. It's kind of it is a really, really long injury list, and we're sort of getting there with some key players at the moment as well. We kind of feel perennially like we just can't get everyone out on the park for a consistent amount of footy, but it has a big impact, and it has a big impact structurally, as you mentioned.
Absolutely.
You mentioned Dean Cox. Was it a bit too early to tell whether his system is working or whether he's a good? How do you feel about him so far?
He's a good fella. He came on our first show of the season, gave us about 45 minutes.
Great.
He's a great fella. He's a really good fella. He understands the place. He's been there for years.
Yep.
Knows all the guys. The guys love him.
Yeah.
The guys absolutely. We've heard from players. They absolutely love him. So tick. And I think those are two intangible, statless things that you're like, okay,
yep,
we've got those right, and
sure.
the rest has to follow.
Yep.
And I just think he's doing the best. His performance last week, coaching wise, to do the job that Dane Rampy did on Toby Green, the job that James Jordan did on Lockie Whitfield. All of this is coaching, right? And what he did with Aaron Francis and Joel Hamling, having them in the forward line, these are not, they're Aaron Francis is a swingman at best. Hamling's a defender.
Swing from the twos to the ones, back to the twos.
I'll tell you what, he's having a good crack at it at the moment. He's a really looking like a really natural lead up forward. Joel.
I think he was a good first up. He was always, when he broke into the team, I think he would come on with a bit of a burst, and then would slow down quickly. So,
but my point is, these are all good coaching moves
for sure.
So you're sort of seeing with limited personnel. What is the best ability, Joel?
Yep.
It's availability. And we don't have a lot of that at the moment. So you make the best of what you've got, and I think he's doing quite well. Probably it's understated.
Yeah. And you mentioned James Jordan as well. So he's up for his 100th game this weekend. Are you getting what you expected when you first got him? Is he a different player to what you thought?
We didn't know what we expected, and I'm pretty confident. I don't know 100%, but I'm pretty confident Melbourne never used him in the way that we used him. Where if you give a guy a role, there are role players in football teams. He's a role player, and what makes him so great in conversations that we've had with him. He's like, I just like to do what the coach tells me to do. And he's like, I use that as I'm really proud of being able to execute that role. And he's done it he held Lockie Neal to bloody 10 disposals. You know, that's phenomenal.
That's great. Yeah.
So when I talk about Zach Merritt,
we'll get there.
That's the role.
So I'll give you some numbers based on the last few games or a bit of the history between the teams. So I think 12 of the last.
You've done your research. Wow.
You got to do, when you're here in the studio, live on camera, in the host chair. I didn't want to let Rob down. His shadow bears strong weight on this chair.
Absolutely.
But 12 of the last 22 games have been decided by 10 points or less. Essendon's only won one of the last 7. The last one we won was during the 2022 season. Nick Hind kicked the sealer.
The great Nick Hind.
Yes, Luke Parker dominated us that day, and I think Chad Warner kicked 3 goals as well. Last year, the Swans beat us by 39 and 30 points. So it's weighted in your favour, even though it does feel close. Now, there's a couple of things that maybe swing it, give us a little bit of a little bit of extra hope. I think the injury list we mentioned. We're coming off a 9-day break.
What are we, 6?
You're 6. And that's a big difference. We had a couple of short weeks and then a pretty big tussle on Anzac Day in the wet. So, and you guys had a tough game against the Giants as well. So I think that makes a bit of a difference. Obviously, us coming up against Aaron Francis, that's huge for us.
Great Aaron Francis.
We want to make sure he knows it. That's going to be his photo is going to be up on the whiteboard in the change rooms. Don't let this bloke leave walking. I reckon.
That big cheesy grin.
yeah, that smug bastard.
That red beard.
Yeah, that's right. And the games at Marvel and
sorry, Joel. I'm going to have to correct you there. Don Dome.
The Don Dome. That's right. Yeah.
Don Dome.
And the siren before the game will obviously spook your players.
Was that Gary Moorcroft last week?
Who did the
Gary
siren?
Moorcroft, Rob? I think it was.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez. Give him a better role, I reckon.
No, that's all he needs to do now. He's done everything he needs to do for this footy club.
Mark.
Yeah, he took the mark, and that's that. So, as you mentioned, there's been some games where you feel like you guys haven't scored that well. There's been some games that we haven't scored that well, and we just sort of just scraped over the line. So hopefully we're in for the same. Now, as an outside supporter, you've touched on it a little bit, but what do you think of when you think Essendon and when you're coming up Essendon? Okay, so it's Zach Merritt or bust.
Well, I mean, he's how many do we have to sort of recount how many times he's just
that would be helpful.
Just put you on his back.
He has.
It's you want to. I would hope that your side would be thinking, mate, you obviously don't outwardly say it, but we owe this bloke. Don't you think? Do you think
we
that
say
as
it? We say it a lot.
Do you? And I listen to the Sash a lot, and I know obviously you talk about him a lot. But do you owe the sheer body of work that is required for Zach Merritt on a week-to-week basis is unlike it's maybe Cripps like sometimes, right?
Yeah.
But he has a lot more around him to help.
I think there was a point at that stage when he was thinking about leaving the footy club, or when he was considering it. I think we're all sitting here saying that we don't begrudge him if he makes that decision, which is kind of a sad place to be at that time when you're captain, you're sort of sitting there saying if he leaves, we're probably not going to hold it against him. Mm-hmm. So even the fact that he stuck that out and decided to kind of back us in and keep going, and he does have to carry us most weeks. So we're forever grateful to him, and it'll be a real shame. Like it has been with other Essendon champions that he could potentially.
And it's not to say that everyone else
have a good crack at finals throughout his career, but he's got time, and he's an ultimate preparer. I think he's probably got another 8 or 9 years.
How old is he?
I think he's 27 now, potentially.
It seems like he's been around for so.
He has been around for a long. Well, because he came on the scene really quickly, and he got 29.
29. Okay.
But he had a lot of game time in the year where we had all our players stop playing, and I think he finished 7th in the Brownlow that year, I remember. Yeah. And he was quite young then, so he has been on the scene for a while. But we owe him a lot.
It's not to say, I hope you don't think I'm just shitting on your football side, but I mean, he's just so far heads and shoulders above anyone else, right? Another guy, I think, in terms of making the best out of what you've got, Kyle Langford often gives us an absolute bath as well. Yeah. So, that's with Langford. I actually thought Peter Wright. I think I was speaking to Rob as well prior to him coming back, and it's like he's dropped off the edge of a cliff and he's done. But all of a sudden, just out of necessity, he's back, right?
He's back, and he's played quite well. I think he didn't kick a goal on the weekend, but he was really competitive. He was presenting really well up the line, and we've sort of noticed here that he lost a bit of physicality when he did his shoulder, and then he got that suspension for 4 or 5 weeks for cleaning whoever it was up in a marking contest. And
wasn't that Wasn't
Cunningham.
It was
Yeah,
Cunningham.
that's right. Yeah.
It was Cunningham.
It's after Jeff, obviously forgettable. And so he kind of really went into his shell for both of those reasons. His overhead marking got a little bit poor, and then his physicality really dropped off. And it kind of feels like now that he's had to fight his way back into the team, he's kind of recaptured that, and he knows that's what's going to hold him there. So it's been a really good couple of weeks for Peter, and he's definitely earning his spot at the moment. And you're right, with him in there and Caddy, as you mentioned earlier, and Langford, that makes us a lot more threatening as a forward line than we were at the start of the season.
Yeah, see, for us, it probably means Hamling needs to go back.
Yep.
Because we will be lacking tools there. So, him, Langford, Kako, again, just learning. But, I think that's probably a job for Sam Wicks as well.
Yep.
And which, just quickly digressing back to Coxie for a minute, he was admonished for the Tom McCartan experiment, which really was only an experiment out of necessity because we didn't have the cattle to send him forward.
Yep.
But no one talks about the fact that Sam Wicks has been a small forward his whole career and has been serviceable, but then they've thrown him back. And he probably played the best game he's ever played last week.
Yeah.
And he's got that mongrel in him.
Yeah.
And he's just added a lot of strings to his bow. And that's all through Coxie.
It's nice seeing that. And, Langford's a good example of that for us. He was tried as a midfielder, tried as this, tried as that. And then when he settled forward and started to really find his feet, it's just awesome to see him, settle in a position. And you mentioned Harry Jones. That's kind of one thing that we're always talking about is where is he actually supposed to play? Now, through necessity, you guys have had a number of debutants this year. I think you've had 4 guys debut, if I've got that right. And my favourite is Riley Bice.
Miami Bice.
Yes, Miami Bice is a great nickname.
From the Werribee Football Factory.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And so what's the impact that he's had on the team, do you think?
Well, he's just a ready-made footballer. I think people coming into AFL he was playing VFL, won a flag with Werribee, but he's just decision-making. And this is what you get with mature people. Now, he's 24, right? I think if 20, that's over a decade younger than me, but from a football sense, really mature, makes right decisions, already has a license to take the hard option because he's got an absolute weapon of a boot. It's the decision-making and then executing on the back of that decision.
Yep.
What more do you need as a footballer, Joel?
It's amazing when people like that are running around in the VFL for such a long time and not on a list. And when a lot of clubs are crying out for good decision-making and good disposal.
But, I mean, I guess you have to put them in the environment to really see that.
For sure.
You have to have taken them in a mid-season draft. You have to have taken them in a rookie draft to go, okay, we've actually uncovered something here because, the skill level, you see it. You see guys all the time that dominate at VFL level.
For sure, that is true.
And they just can't cut the mustard at AFL level.
Yep.
Every club's got a number
We
of
see
them.
We see them.
You would.
So I'll ask you a couple of questions about the game, but there was one more question I wanted to ask beforehand. So you did touch on this a little bit before as well, and I think.
Sorry, I've cocked up your order.
No, it's been great. It's flowed swimmingly. Swans, I think, for a long time were known as a heavily contested team, and obviously Blood's culture. From the outside, Blood's culture for me was always just like tough, contested footy, like not giving anyone an inch. And I think it was really uncompromising. And I wanted to ask if you still see that as a defining character.
I don't know if you saw. I don't know if you saw what Ruzi said a couple of weeks ago. He sort of came out after I think it was the Gold Coast game.
Mm-hmm.
He basically said, they've lost their DNA, and I would challenge Ruzi on that because the game is very different to 05 and 06.
Yep.
It's the game's. I'm not necessarily even going to use the word evolved, but it's changed so much, and the requirement to win a football game is so different that I think Blood's culture per se is more just about being selfless, having a team first mentality, and not giving up fundamentally.
Yep.
And that's why I think there's been a level of frustration, especially with that Gold Coast game. And I was frustrated too because it looked like we seemingly gave up, and that's not what we want our DNA to be. We want to be a team that is always very, very difficult to come up against, no matter the ladder position, no matter the injury list, no matter anything. That's what we want to be known for, and I'm pretty sure we've been known that for the better part of 2 decades,
absolutely,
and longer.
Yeah,
and I think that's what I think. It's easy to just look at game plan and structures and say, well, that's Bloods culture. I think it's a lot more intangible than that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I think you're right. The game is changing.
You can't just be this dour side, especially with like the 666 rule. You can't just plug numbers behind the ball the whole time, you know?
Yeah. Well, yeah, we see, you know, I mean, Ross Lyons, obviously, the kind of person
you
who
want
does
to talk
it the
about
most,
dour?
but yeah, I mean, the Saints are up and down in that sense as well. Now, you mentioned your forward line as well.
Yeah, there's no forward line, Joel.
Yeah.
There's no forward line there. There's nothing out there.
So there are 6 players listed. Oh, there will be 6 players listed in the forward line.
There will
positions.
be. There will be. It's not a
They may
forward
not
line.
be forwards.
We're outside the environment.
But what's you know, with the forward line as it is at the moment,
sure.
like how does Sydney? What is your ticket to kicking a winning score?
Well, an
How
Aaron
does that
Francis legacy game of four goals. I'm tipping 7 between Francis and Warner.
work? Okay, love that. Most goals ever, Aaron Francis.
I reckon it's 3.
Yeah, I reckon 3 checks. My internet's not working.
If
Rob?
you can pull that up, Rob.
We'll get that up in the meantime. So I guess for the Swans, then where do you see this game being won?
I mean, a big strength of ours has been scores from midfielders.
Yep.
And that's something we love at True Bloods is scoreboard impact from midfielders.
Yep.
And Haynes, you know, Haynes has a little bit of Zach Merritt in him in that regard. He puts on a number of different hats over the course of a game. And he's really hard to beat in a forward line. He's really hard to beat in the air. He's super strong. When he goes forward, give me a matchup that will soundly beat him every time. You can't.
Yep.
So, you know, him, Chad, even Justin McInerney's starting to hit his straps again.
Yep.
Which I've been a little bit frustrated with. Deebs talks me off the cliff with Justin McInerney occasionally, but scores from midfielders. You got guys like Braden Campbell, Corey Warner. It's your sort of bottom 6 hitting the scoreboard when that's sort of happening. When you're getting a really wide array of people, no passengers, everybody having a crack.
Yep.
That's phenomenal. But I mean, Hayden McLean, Doss, as we lovingly, affectionately call him, he's a really good contested mark. That's probably an area that we struggle with, contested marks.
Yeah, okay.
But he's probably one that can do it. But yeah, I just think it's the sum of all parts for us to kick a winning score at the moment. But I mean, that being said, you know, us against Port, Aaron Francis came on and was sub and had some of the highest fantasy points of anyone who was on the ground.
Yeah, it was as 3 goals is his
And that
career
would have
high.
been the game against Port. Yeah.
There you go. So he's in good form. Career best form. in
Career
fact.
best form, as it were.
Well, this has been a talking point for Dons. So we've got a guy who's going to debut. It was announced today that Lewis Hayes is going to be making his debut. He's 199 centimetre backman. Natural replacement in a way for Jordan Ridley. But then we've also got Zach Reid down there who's over 200 centimetres and Ben Mackay the same as well. So, you know, you're obviously saying that you guys don't have a tall and recognised forward line necessarily, but your goals are coming from a lot of different options. And that was a discussion point on a lot of Essendon forums and threads is we want to give this guy Hayes a debut, but are we being silly getting a third bloke over 200 centimetres into the back line for this game? So it probably really depends on what your entries inside 50 are like at the moment, because if we can just towel them up.
They got better last week.
Yeah.
And that's what I really love saying. I mean, Chad just signed a deal with us, right? And that was massive for us. not seeing him last week, and he's got the license to blaze away and kick goals from outside 50, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the best I've seen us going inside 50 was Chad delivering it to Doss and Aaron Francis and things like that. And that's what I really like to see, and that's something I really want to see. He's injured now, and I don't know when we'll be seeing him, but with Logan McDonald, you know, you just want to see that old school sort of forward craft just get a bit of separation from your defender and lead up and just take an uncontested mark on the chest, or get the jukes out, Jolie. That's all you want to see. Too often, you know, I think there's the panic kicks bombing it in. And as I've already mentioned, we're not a great contested marking side. So that's where it gets a bit frustrating for me. But when we lower our eyes, we've got some of the best field kicks in the comp. Right? And that's even without Errol Goulden. You said it would happen, and it happened.
And there we go.
I hope you're still rolling, because that's good gear.
Yeah. The hook was put up about 6 hours ago, so I had plenty of time to attach. But Job, talk about people who carried footy clubs. He's still carrying a lot of weight, and clearly that's showing.
We'll digress. Oh, wow. That says it all.
That does say it all.
Swans by 5.
So you've mentioned a couple of names, and I'll give you a couple from the Swans after as well. So you mentioned,
who do you like?
So I'm a huge Chad Warner fan. He's one of those sorts of players that, fast, skillful, goal-kicking midfielder that's tough, that can take a game by the scruff of the neck. And we mentioned Zach Merritt, and that's what we're trying to build. I don't think we've got a lot of people that are recognised like that. And Durham, who you mentioned, potentially could get there. And I think Caldwell can get there as a midfielder potentially as well. But, Warner off the chain is something that's really, really threatening. And then, look, realistically, the ones that I'm normally most scared about are out. So it seems a bit obvious, but it probably is Warner and Haynes that are the ones that I feel like could tear us apart. I feel like Rampy always has a good game and always screws us over, so he'll probably
climbs a goalpost or two.
He'll probably dominate someone. But
Sure.
I think if our defense on transition is poor, which it has been for a while, and then we let the guys like Warner storm up and down the field, then you're probably going to score some easy goals.
Yeah, it's a lizard you got to worry about and there as well, course, because indoor footy, it's tailor-made for the lizard.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
indoor footy and poor skills from the opposition is tailor-made for the lizard.
Well,
that is what he thrives upon.
Yeah, then he's probably going to be a big threat. So that's who I think probably has a good chance of dominating us against the Swans. I think for us, in terms of winning the game, I think it's the guys that you mentioned. I think it's our forward line. I think Peter Wright's in good form. I think Caddy has been really competitive in his sort of building, but neither him nor Kako have had a big goal game. So I think at some stage one of those two will.
And that's what the hard thing about losing Malikan is.
Yeah, that's right.
Because I know you're coming up against a tall forward line.
Yeah, so I think that's probably it for us, where I say it's happening. Now, there's another battle that I think we need to talk about as well, and it's Goldstein versus Brodie Grundy. Have you watched, you mentioned you watched the North game, so you've seen a bit of Goldie playing.
He gets around the ground nicely for his age. I think, is he my age? 36. Yeah. Jesus.
Jesus. Yeah, so
I've got more hair than him. That's about it.
He's a fantastic competitor.
Yes.
But he's not. He hasn't been super effective in the ruck contest, particularly as games have gone on.
It's because he's 36 years old, Joel.
Yeah, well, he told Brad he would be ready. Brad kept telling us that he told him that he'd be ready, and he is ready somewhat. He's doing a great job, but I think that's probably another area that I see guys being able to get on top. I don't know if Grundy's form's been fantastic, but he can be super mobile.
Grundy was struggling a little bit, and something Grundy needs to get out of his game a little bit is sort of asking for free kicks, I think.
Okay.
If I'm being super critical, which I do like to be.
Yep, as you should. This is an opinion podcast. We aren't official here.
The official, unofficial. He's been phenomenal. last couple of weeks. Yeah, he's just the way Brodie Grundy is playing well is his second and third efforts around the ground.
Yep. And that's always been when he's playing really well. He's been that added midfielder. Yeah. And Goldie, he might not have it with him to be able to do that. Right? They are. So I think Peter was amicable when he was second up on the weekend, but I see that as being a pretty key contest. And we were at the point last week where we were trying to read the Jerry's taps and trying to figure out what they were doing with the ruck, knowing that it was likely to go that way. So I think that could be a big decider on the game as well, and how things play out. Look, we're pretty much getting to the end of it, Madison.
I don't want it to end.
Is there? Keep him rolling. I think Rob wants to go home to his young family.
Sure.
Little Levi.
Sash. What do you? It's funny because on the potty, Deebs and I are always like Swans by how far. We've never tipped against the Swans, but I believe it's rather different here in at the Sash.
Not to say it will be this week.
What do you genuinely think?
I think it's going to be close, as it always is.
Yep.
I reckon we do have the ability to win this game of footy, and I think I'm going to tip us. I'm going to say by 6 points.
Wow.
I think with your injury list, that really helps us. I think if you had a full strength list and we had a full strength list, I would be tipping you.
I still just don't think you're factoring in the Aaron Francis legacy game, and that'll.
But you don't understand how much our boys are going to get pumped for that. How much they can't wait to line him up. Yeah. Dylan Shield. He's going to take out his Parker blues on Aaron Francis.
That's right. That's right.
Big on someone your own size. No, so I'm gonna go. So we'll do result, best on, and most goals, and I'll go Dons by 6. I'm gonna say Caldwell best on in his return game.
Oh, he's in for.
Well, he hasn't been named, but it's very, very likely he's coming. And they always penciled this game as a return game, and he was in good enough form to not come through the VFL.
So with our selection, you just never know. We never have any idea. So
I think for him, he's a definite in. And then I'm going to say Peter is going to kick a couple of goals this week. I think he's going to kick 4.
4.
Yep.
Well, I think we're going to win by a point.
Oof.
And I think it'll be Aaron Francis kicking 4 goals. And I think the 4th one will be after the siren at the Lockett end.
Okay.
Which will probably end a frustrating night for me because I tend to cop it from Essendon supporters in a big way. It's a very unfriendly environment, Don Dome, on a Saturday afternoon.
That's what I want to hear.
For a travelling supporter.
Okay. Well, I'm happy about that.
Yes.
That's what we like to hear.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
for joining me.
It's been fantastic.
And it has been great.
It's just been incredible.
Tune into the True Bloods. It's a great podcast. These guys do an awesome job.
I'm sure all your Essendon supporters will be keen to jump on that. Look forward to having you.
Some fantastic Swans
it's funny.
Content.
We find it funny.
They do. They gag.
We crack ourselves up.
But thank you everyone for joining us. Hopefully we get a win on the weekend up the Plains.